guys, we've just finished building this lovely green chassis jig for you to show you our new Mark II rack and pinion steering, which we've spent the last 9 months working on and tweaking and changing and generally messing around until we've got it exactly how we want it. But we took a load of pictures underneath the car, both a left and a right hand drive cars. And at the end of the day, you couldn't really see the detail. It's a bit like Haynes manual or whatever. You see a picture, but it doesn't show you much detail. So we thought we'd build this stand and then assemble the thing on the display stand, and you'll get a much better view of what's involved, how long it might take you, and what tools you need, that sort of stuff. So here it is. We've got it all assembled here. It's pretty straightforward, but watch the video in a minute or two and you'll see it step by step. Hope you enjoy it. Thanks a lot. Right, the first job to do is to use our template, which we've included in the instructions. Cut round with a pair of scissors, cut the holes out, and you get that template. And what we're going to do now is to secure that gently and carefully in place. That's it. And then, now obviously we've already done this before we powder coated the chassis, but yeah, you'd mark round the template, and that's the template's job done. There we go, and that will give you that shape as opposed to the factory shape, which was like that. So there's a little bit of material gone, but much less than our previous version. So that's that part done. Okay, we're now going to fit the main mounting bracket onto the chassis. This is utilising the 5 original Volkswagen holes. Captive nuts. There's 3 on the side. Now what we're going to do, leave them loose, just finger them in, but don't nip the washers up, leave them loose so the plate can move. Same with the one in the top. Now the last one of the 5 is a cap head. If we can see, that's at the end of the head. That's going to go in with a little dot of Loctite on, just a smidge, without any washer. It goes into that remaining hole there. There we go. And the importance of leaving them loose is to get them all lined up like that. Okay. Okay, we're just going to torque these bolts up now. We've finger tightened the top 2, and now we're going to hit the side 3 with a torque wrench set at 70 Newton meters. That's pulling the side plate hard into the chassis before you do the other 2, the top ones. So now the side plate is right up tight against the chassis, with the top 2 just being torqued up as well. So once again, it's 70 Newton meters. Now we're going to do the cap head fitting. That's all 5 totally secured now. Okay, we're now going to do the last two holes on that plate, which we've already drilled them on our jig, but we'll just show you what you would do. You'd put an 8mm drill bit into the hole, just run it, start a pilot hole, you'll leave a couple of indents, which then if you take a 6mm drill bit and go in on the holes you've just made, and the same with the other one, and he would go right through to the other side of the cross member. So try and be careful and keep the thing level. You want the hole to be parallel on the other side, so concentrate on the level. That's it. And then we'll put in the M8s. There's a square plate which stops the cross member cracking, goes on the other side of the bolt. We're just using ordinary M8 standard nuts as we're taking this thing on and off. We're not putting nylox or PT nuts on any of these screws today, so just standard nuts so we can get it on and off and do whatever we want to do with this jig at the moment. Obviously on your installation you'll be using the lock nuts. Once again, square plate on the other side. Just make sure the square plates run nice and sort of parallel with the cross member on the other side. You can see the ends just level there. Always looks nicer if they're square. Now this time we're going to use the torque wrench again, but we're dropping it right down to 10 Newton meter because we've got a very soft cross member here. It's 2mm wall, I believe, maybe 2.5. There we go. That's the first click. There we go, that's the second one done. So that's all the mounting bolts taken care of. You've got the two small M8s at the back we've just done. We've got the cap head M10 there. Very important that that's a cap head and it hasn't got a spring washer on or any washer on. And then we've got the other M10 by 25 at the front of the chassis. So that's that section complete. Right, one thing to help is to just unscrew the bumper, the forward bumper bolt. You don't need to take it right out, but just slack it off, and that will help getting the cross member we're going to fit now. So this is the cross member. We're going to bolt it up at the business end first. So this is a M10 by 25 hex bolt, hex screw, with a washer on either side. And what we're going to do now, we're going to put two bolts into the slots, which is the forward mount for the steering rack. And push. We're going to put those in like Sean's just done and push them out to the both extremes, far right and far left. And what happens now, we've made it that we can adjust a little bit the angle of the cross member. It can pivot on that right hand side bolt, and the other two just keep the channel aligned correctly to the main cross member. And now we can look at the other end where we're going to put a little gusset and a crush plate in. So if we come down this end now, Sean's got another square spacer and a gusset thing. I'm going to drop that. The square plate you can see is put on top of the cross member, and we're putting an M10 by 25 set screw through the gusset, through the square plate and through the cross member, and on the other side of the cross member we've obviously got a washer and a nut. So there we go, that's that corner. Now the important thing back here is this curve here, the cutout, which is on both sides of the car. Each chassis rail has this curved clearance. What we want to try and do is to make sure that the mount, this bolt and the plate, the channel, everything is sat happily on the flat section and not too far rearward and sort of overlapping onto the curved section. And if I can get right in down here, you can see there is a little rearward gap, but the bolt is actually anchoring it on the flat, and that's perfect like that. So make sure that you get the cross member sufficiently far forward. And obviously back in the day there were no computers, there were no robots building these. Everything was hand jigged, and you may get a slight variation, well not may, there would have been slight variations on all the cars built. But just watch out that we don't want to be bending and twisting everything, and you might want to just file a little bit of an oval slot on that hole come the moment. But the main thing is not to mount it on the curve. You're trying to keep everything flat. Okay, we're just going to finish this gusset off now with two more, the last two holes. We're putting an M10 drill bit and just making a pilot dimple. Then we'll go for the 6mm drill, or 8, 6 or 8, doesn't much matter. Drill right the way through the chassis. You can tell we pre-drilled these, can't you? But at least you can see the sequence. And then you're going to open the 6 or 8mm up to a 10mm. Perfect. Now we're going to fit two more M10 by 25 hex screws with washers on either side. That's it. And then the last one. Okay, so we've got 3 there. Right, here we are. We're just going to torque these 3 bolts down now to 70 Newton meters. There's one gone. There's a second one. It is tight. You're trying to get into that corner. There's a captive nut retaining plate on the inside of the chassis, which is why we've slackened that nut out. But there we go, that's all 3 done. A little bit fiddly. It's probably the worst bit of the whole job. But shouldn't take more than a few minutes. Right, we're now going to assemble the bevel box assembly. We'll start by fitting the bevel box UJ bevel box to steering wheel, and that's an M10 by 50 hex bolt with a washer on either side, and it would be a lock nut there. We're just putting a standard nut on to expedite the video. And then Sean's just going to set that to 40 Newton meters. There we go. It's on nicely. Now we fit the bevel box spacer. Just drop that, seat that on there. Then the bevel box mounting bracket and an M25 cap head, M10 by 25 cap head, fitted with spring washers. There's 4 of them, all the same. Tighten them up by hand to start with. I'll put the old torque wrench on in a second. Right, we've got 4 cap heads here and they are going to be tightened to 35 Newton meters. There we go. 1, 2, 3, and the last one, 4. Okay, so that assembly is now ready to take to the car and mount it. Right, we're now going to fit the bevel box assembly to the main mounting bracket, and that's going to be secured with 3 M10 by 25 hex bolts with a washer on either side. Once again, we're using nuts, just a standard nut. You'll be installing it with lock nuts. So once again, all 3 of them are coming up from the underside of this chassis, the opposite way round to all the others you've done. And we won't over tighten these because we're going to show you the adjustment on the bracket. That should give an inward and outward movement of about 3 millimeters. It doesn't sound much, but it's enough to give a little bit of tolerance adjustment from, say, a 1964 bus to a 1967 bus or whatever, or a bus on a Monday and a bus on a Tuesday. They all would have varied very slightly, but enough. If you don't have any means of adjustment, it can cause the customer a problem come the moment. But right, now we're going to torque these up. What setting are we at?
70.
70 Newton meters on the M10s here. Nice and tight, but not too tight to hurt the bolt. There we go, that's all 3 tightened. So now we have the main bracket secured solidly to the chassis, and now the bevel box assembly secured fully to the first bracket. We're now almost on the home run now. We're going to fit the rack with the UJs. Okay, we're going to go towards the finish now. Let's put the UJ on the bevel box assembly. It's M8 by 40 hex bolt, 2 washers and a lock nut. I'm going to tighten those up. 35 Newton meters. There we go. So this is like the links on a chain where we tighten them up in a specific order. So the bevel box is hard down. That UJ is now hard to the bevel box, it can't move. And now we're going to just slip the rack into the UJ. That's it. And now we're going to do that bolt up tight. So basically the last thing to get tightened down, to get fixed down, will be the rack. So this is the second UJ bolt going in. Once again M8 by 40 hex bolt. A couple of washers and then a lock nut. 35 Newton meters. So everything is secure other than the rack itself. So we're going to put, there's 2 different lengths of cap head bolts here. We got, let's just have a look at those, Sean. There's M8 by 40s and M8 by 50s. The longer one, the M8 50s, are going where Sean's putting them at now. They have to be longer because of the cross member is another 4mm of steel for them to go through. And the shorter M8 by 40s go in the rack at this end. So the rack's sitting happily there in those slots, the rack bolts. It's not stressed in any way. This will all turn quite easily and the rack would go in and out if I could do that one-handed. We've got special, it's like a washer basically, a rack plate, so that goes up over the 2 bolts, washer and a nut going on underneath twice. Right, and then rearward to this end and the 40mm ones, plate, washer, nut. And the last washer and a nut. So that's all 4 in. We're going to tighten those up now. We've got a hex drive on the torque wrench now. 35. Oops. Any stand on this. I'll go that one. To the second one. That's the 4th screw, so the rack is now down. So what we'll do in a minute is we'll just check that that feels comfy. Should do, because we haven't bound anything up. All good?
Good.
We've got a nod of approval from Sean. Right, what we're going to show you now is the last thing, is connecting the rack to the idler arm, and we're going to start by measuring and finding the centre of the rack travel. So Sean's is measuring from the rack, the threaded part of the rack, the end of the rack, to a point on the rack. And what you got there?
390.
We've got a measurement of 390. So that's fully out and as long as it can be, 390. So we're going to wind the rack in as far as it will go. And now we're going to measure from the 2 points again, that's the end of the rack, the very tip of the thread, to the bolt in the rack there, the centre. What's that, Sean?
280.
280. Okay, so what we're doing now, we've prepared a little calculation for you. Fully out, the rack was 390. Fully in, it's 280, which means there's 110 millimeters of travel in total off the rack. To find the centre, we divide that by 2, which is 55 millimeters. So what we're now going to do is add the 280 fully in length of the rack, add 55 to that, and we've got a total distance we need to adjust to of 335. So Sean's going to do that now, and we're going to adjust the setting until Sean's got 335. Once again, from the very tip of the thread on the rack down to that hole in the centre of the lock bolt. 335.
Yep.
So there we are. That's a quick, easy way of centering the rack. Now what we're going to do is fit the tie rod end onto the rack. And we've also got a bolt here, which we use just to eyeball and centre the idler arm in the middle of the adjuster. You only need to do it by eye. If I stand in the right place and just correct what Sean's just done, that's good for me. That's the centre line. So the distance from the idler arm left and right would be the same pretty well on the tie rods. So Sean's going to now screw the rod end onto the rack. We've taken great care not to move the rack in or out, of course, at this point, and just adjust that until it goes straight in the hole. So we now have 335 millimeter length on the rack, and that idler arm is centered. There's down it. There we go, and that will be close enough to lock that up. And here we are, we're putting the lock nut, which is 9/16.
5/8.
5/8 was it?
Yes.
5/8, well corrected. 5/8 nut on that, UNF nut.
22 mil, just to lock it.
And a 22mm spanner just to lock that, I think it's a 16mm nut. So there we go. We've got a completed system, all hooked up. Hard to turn with the UJ at the moment because everything's fresh and new, but you can see the idler arm turning left to right, and with the steering wheel it'd be great. Sean's just going to flip the stand over, stand back because it's a bit heavy, let him do it, and then you can have a look at it from the other side. Nice and gently there, Sean, and there we go. So we've got the whole system in. Now it's a bit easy to get to that UJ that's tucked away in there. Got the brake pedal in there showing the clearance. There's all the nuts, bolts, everything you did before, the other way up. Of course you don't normally see this so easily as we've only got a jig with no floor in the way, but at least it shows you what you've got to achieve. So I'll just go around this a little bit and hopefully everything we've done will make sense. I'll just twist us back. There we go. Everybody happy?